The rain had been falling since late afternoon, but the storm truly arrived just after sunset, bringing loud wind and sudden darkness across the Seattle apartment complex. Ethan Morgan had just returned from a long day at work, hoping for a quiet night with hot tea and a warm blanket. He pushed the door closed behind him, dropped his keys into the small ceramic bowl near the entrance, and exhaled slowly. He always felt relief when he stepped into the calm of his home. But tonight, something in the air felt heavier, almost electric, as if the whole building was waiting for something to happen. He walked toward the kitchen, thinking about making tea when the power suddenly cut out with a soft pop. The apartment fell into darkness except for the faint light of the street lamps pushing through the closed curtains. Ethan blinked, letting his eyes adjust. The outage didn't surprise him. Storms like this often cause trouble in the neighborhood. But instead of reaching for his phone or a flashlight, he walked closer to the window. A strange pull guided him there, though he couldn't explain why. He parted the curtains just enough to look outside. The courtyard below was soaked from the rain, and the wind swung the branches of the small maple tree near the walkway. The opposite building sat quiet and dark, every window dim except one. That was when Ethan saw her. Lily Harper. She lived directly across from him on the same floor. But their paths had never crossed beyond the occasional polite nod in the hallway or elevator. She was the kind of neighbor everyone noticed, soft-spoken, gentle, always carrying a book or a tote bag from a local cafe. Ethan had always thought she seemed warm, but distant, like someone who kept most of her world hidden inside her smile. Tonight, that smile was gone. He saw her standing in front of her window, illuminated only by a single candle sitting on her table. The glow shaped her face gently, revealing her eyes fixed downward. Her shoulders drawn in as though she was trying to hold herself upright despite something heavy inside her chest. The rain outside made tiny streaks across the glass, but nothing blurred the expression on her face. It wasn't dramatic or loud, it was quiet heartbreak, the kind that sinks slowly into a person and leaves them standing still because moving might make everything fall apart. Ethan felt a strange ache rise in him. He wasn't intruding. He wasn't watching for entertainment. He simply couldn't look away because something about the moment felt real. Raw and unexpectedly intimate in a safe and respectful way. It was the kind of moment people never reveal out loud, but when shown unintentionally, it pulls others closer without meaning to. Her hand rested against her chest, right over her heart. She looked like someone trying to steady her breathing. Like someone who had heard something that changed her world in a single sentence. Ethan's hand tightened around the curtain. He couldn't hear anything, but he felt everything. She seemed to feel: sadness, confusion, and a quiet struggle to remain calm. He knew he should step back. She deserved privacy, but he couldn't move. The scene didn't feel improper. It felt meaningful. Like he was witnessing the moment a story begins without either character realizing it. Yet, then Lily lifted her head. Her gaze moved slowly, almost dreamlike, and she looked toward the window toward him. For a second, Ethan panicked, thinking she would think he was staring. But her expression didn't shift into anger or discomfort. Instead, something softened in her eyes. Like she wasn't surprised at all to see him there. Their eyes met fully, clearly, deeply. The connection was silent but full of emotion neither of them had ever exchanged in person. It wasn't romantic in an obvious way and not dramatic like a movie. It was something gentler to people seeing each other honestly for the first time. Her eyes shimmered slightly, and he noticed she wasn't trying to hide her sadness. It was almost as if she was letting herself be seen on purpose. Or maybe she simply didn't have the strength to pretend to be fine. Then, slowly, Lily stepped closer to the window. It was a small, hesitant movement, but it said more than any words could. She wasn't pulling the curtain closed. She wasn't stepping back. She was moving toward him. Ethan felt his breath catch. Why? Was she seeking comfort? Was she asking for someone to notice her pain? Or was this simply a quiet moment between two lonely people on a stormy night? Before he could process anything, there came a sound behind him, a knock on his door. Soft, almost unsure. He turned toward it immediately, heart beating faster for reasons he couldn't explain. He walked through the dim living room, guided only by the faint blue-gray lights sneaking through the window. When he opened the door, he froze. Lily Harper was standing there. Her raincoat glistened with droplets. She must have walked through the courtyard in the storm. Her hair was slightly messy from the wind, and her eyes looked even more emotional up close, tired, red around the edges, but hopeful in a fragile way. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling gently. I didn't know who else to go to. I didn't know what to say. They weren't friends. They were barely acquaintances. But the way she stood there, clutching her coat and looking like she had been holding back tears for hours, made him understand that something serious had happened. "You can come in," he said softly. Stepping aside, she walked inside slowly, as if unsure whether she was making the right choice, but hoping she was. The scent of rain followed her, mixing with the faint smell of Ethan's houseplants. For a moment, they stood there in the darkness, listening to the echo of thunder outside. Ethan closed the door gently, not wanting to startle her. He turned to her, wondering if he should ask what happened or if she needed time. But before he could decide, the hallway lights flickered weakly, a brief glow, then darkness again. The power outage wasn't going away anytime soon. The flicker made Lily inhale sharply, and Ethan noticed the way her fingers tightened around her coat sleeve. She looked overwhelmed, like the smallest thing could push her emotions over the edge. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded at first, but then she shook her head, unable to pretend. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I couldn't stay over there alone tonight." She looked small, not in size, but in spirit, like she had been trying to hold the pieces of her life together and finally allowed herself one moment to let them fall. Ethan didn't move closer, but he didn't step back either. He wanted her to feel safe, not watched. "You're not alone," he said calmly. "You came to the right place." For a moment, she simply closed her eyes and breathed slowly, as if the words were giving her the space she needed. She loosened her hold on the coat and let her shoulders relax, even if only by a fraction. The candlelight from her apartment still glowed through his window, casting a warm, moving reflection across the floor. "I saw you through the window," she whispered suddenly, surprising him. "I hope that doesn't sound strange." Ethan didn't speak yet. Letting her continue, "I saw the light from your apartment before the power went out," she said. "And when I looked out, you were there. And for the first time all day, I didn't feel completely invisible." Her voice broke slightly at the last word. Ethan's heart tightened. He didn't know what she had gone through, but he understood one thing very clearly. She came to him because she needed someone who wouldn't judge her, someone who felt safe. He was still trying to form the right words when the lights flickered again, dim but steady this time. The storm still raged outside, but the inside of the apartment felt warm despite the power outage. Lily exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry for showing up like this," she said softly. "I know we barely know each other, but something in me just said to come here." Ethan met her eyes, steady and kind. "I'm glad you did." For a moment, silence stretched between them, not awkward, not tense, but full of quiet connection. It wasn't romantic yet, but it wasn't empty either. It was something delicate and new. And then, right when he felt the moment settling into something meaningful, the hallway lights went out completely with a final click, plunging everything into darkness. Lily gasped softly, and Ethan reached out instinctively, not grabbing her, just placing a comforting hand near her arm so she knew she wasn't alone. The storm roared outside. The building hummed with silence. Two strangers stood together, guided only by emotion and candlelight. And that was the moment everything changed. The flickering emergency lights gave the apartment a soft, almost magical glow, painting the room in shades of gold and gray. Ethan guided Lily inside gently, careful not to make sudden movements that might startle her. She closed the door behind her, leaving the storm and the wet courtyard behind. Even though she was only a few steps away, her presence felt larger than the space around her. There was a vulnerability in her that Ethan had never seen before, and it pulled at him in ways he couldn't fully explain. She was soaked from the rain, her hair damp and clinging slightly to her forehead. And yet there was a strength in the way she held herself together. Small though it might have been. "I saw you through the window," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the storm's distant rumble. "I hope that doesn't sound strange." Ethan shook his head, unsure whether to laugh or sigh. "Not at all," he said, his voice calm, steady. "I'm glad you came." She gave him a small, tired smile, and it was the first time Ethan truly noticed how delicate her features were. How her eyes could hold both sadness and hope at the same time. She moved toward the couch, hesitating for a moment, as if testing whether she had permission to take the next step. Ethan gestured toward it, and she sank into the cushions like she had been carrying the weight of the world for too long. The storm outside rattled the windows, but inside, a quiet tension filled the space, a tension of emotions waiting to be named. A connection neither of them had acknowledged before tonight. I just didn't know where else to go," Lily admitted, wrapping her arms around herself. "Tonight, everything felt too heavy, and I saw your light through the window, and I thought maybe you would understand." Ethan sat down opposite her, careful to give her space. He didn't need to say anything immediately. Her honesty hung in the room, delicate and raw, and it deserved acknowledgement, not interruption. He studied her face, the slight quiver of her lips, the moisture in her eyes. The way she tried to remain composed despite the storm raging both outside and within her. There was a quiet beauty in that struggle. And Ethan felt an unfamiliar protective instinct rise inside him. "Tell me what happened," he said softly. "Only if you want to." She nodded, biting her lip before speaking. It's my fiancé. He called off our wedding this morning." Her voice cracked on the last word, and Ethan felt a sudden pang of empathy. He couldn't imagine the depth of disappointment, the hollow ache that must have settled inside her. "I thought I was fine. I thought I'd moved past all the doubts I had, but tonight, it hit me. I realized how alone I really was." The honesty in her voice was both shocking and moving. Ethan wanted to reach out, but he held himself back. This was about her, not him. Yet he could feel a connection forming, fragile but undeniable. He wanted to make her feel seen, wanted to assure her that she wasn't as alone as she felt. "You're not alone tonight," he said, his tone steady, gentle. "You came here. That means something. That counts for something." Lily's shoulders relaxed fractionally, and for a moment she simply breathed, letting the words sink in. The storm outside seemed to recede just a little, or maybe it was just the calm of the apartment that made it feel that way. Ethan offered her a small smile, one that wasn't forced, one that came from a place of genuine understanding. She looked up at him, eyes shimmering with a mix of gratitude and sadness. And it struck him how easily emotions could be conveyed without words, how deeply people could communicate simply through presence. I didn't want to bother anyone," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I didn't know if I could trust anyone." "You don't have to worry about that here," Ethan said. "I'm listening. That's all that matters right now." The candlelight reflected softly on the walls, casting gentle shadows. And the quiet warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the storm outside. Lily let out a slow breath and began speaking, slowly at first, sharing fragments of her day. The fears she had carried for months, the quiet disappointments no one else had noticed. Ethan listened, not offering solutions, not pushing for more, just absorbing the words. Nodding when appropriate, letting her feel that someone was truly present. It was a simple act, yet it created a bridge between them. A silent promise that she could be vulnerable without judgment. Her story continued, moving from the heartbreak of the morning to the small, unnoticed moments of loneliness she had endured in the months leading up to the canceled wedding. She spoke of the smiles she had worn to hide tears, the nights she had spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone really saw her, and the small relief she felt when she realized that maybe tonight someone finally had. Ethan remained silent, letting her pour out the emotions she had been carrying, feeling his own heart respond in unexpected ways. At one point, their hands brushed lightly as she shifted to reach for her coat, still damp from the rain. Neither pulled away. The contact was fleeting, yet it carried warmth, an unspoken reassurance that she wasn't facing the storm alone. Ethan felt a gentle thrill, not romantic in the typical sense, but something tender, human, and profoundly intimate in its simplicity. "I think I felt safer in these last few minutes than I have in years," she said quietly, almost a confession. Her eyes met his, and he could see the sincerity in them. It's a fragile hope that someone might finally understand her without asking for anything in return. Ethan nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "I'm glad you're here," he replied. "Really?" Storm outside continued, but the apartment seemed insulated from the chaos. A small sanctuary built from their shared presence. They sat together, talking intermittently, sometimes in silence, sometimes sharing small smiles or soft laughter when the conversation drifted to lighter topics. There was a natural rhythm to their interaction, a give and take that didn't feel forced but organic, like two people discovering a connection they didn't know they were ready for as the night progressed. Lily spoke about the future, about the uncertainty she felt, and the fear of being alone. Ethan listened, offering small words of reassurance, letting her know that she didn't have to face it by herself. She responded with small nods, her expression softening with each passing minute. The tension in her shoulders eased. The tightness around her chest seemed to release just a little, and Ethan realized that sometimes listening was enough to make someone feel truly cared for. Eventually, the storm began to subside. The wind slowed and the rain softened into a gentle patter against the windows. Lily glanced toward the window, noticing the dim lights of the apartment complex flickering back to life. For a moment, she hesitated, reluctant to leave the safe cocoon of conversation and understanding that had formed between them. Ethan noticed the hesitation, the small pause in her movement, and gave her a reassuring smile. "I don't know what happens next," she said softly, almost a whisper. "But can we talk again tomorrow?" Ethan's heart lifted. "Tomorrow," he said, a quiet certainty in his voice. "And every day you want." She smiled, a small, genuine smile that seemed to hold both relief and gratitude. It wasn't the kind of smile that demanded attention or drama. It was subtle, intimate, and completely unguarded. She took a step toward the door, paused, and gave him one last look, one that said more than words ever could. There was a promise in her eyes, a quiet acknowledgement that this night had changed something for both of them. Something neither could ignore. As the door clicked shut behind her, Ethan felt a mixture of emotions: relief that she was safe, hope that this connection could grow, and a quiet excitement at the possibility of what tomorrow might bring. The storm outside had passed, leaving the world fresh and wet, filled with the scent of rain and the soft sounds of water dripping from rooftops and leaves. Inside the apartment, a sense of calm settled over him, a feeling that this night, unexpected and fragile, had marked the beginning of something meaningful. He returned to the window for a moment, looking out at the courtyard and the opposite building. Lily's apartment was dark again, but the memory of her presence lingered, warm and vivid. Ethan understood that sometimes the people we're meant to meet appear in the most unexpected ways. In the quiet moments between storms, when the world feels too heavy to face alone. And tonight, she had appeared. He knew the path ahead was uncertain. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring or how their connection might evolve. But one thing was clear. In a world that often moved too fast and left people feeling invisible, two strangers had found a moment of truth, honesty, and human connection that could not be taken away. Ethan leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, letting the stillness fill him. The storm outside had gone, but the echo of the night remained. He could still feel her presence, the warmth of her vulnerability, the fragile hope that had passed between them. It was a night that would linger in memory, a night that would become the quiet, unspoken beginning of something neither had expected but both now wanted. And in that realization, Ethan felt a strange and wonderful certainty sometimes. The person who changes everything doesn't arrive with fanfare or announcements. Sometimes they appear quietly across a courtyard, waiting for the lights to go out, waiting for someone to finally notice.